Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. Today we're going to talk about the C8 Z06 and how it was just photographed sporting a very interesting rear spoiler. Alright guys, so the C8 Corvette Z06 is definitely coming, and it's coming pretty soon apparently because we keep getting leaks. Week after week after week, GM is doing just enough to keep us all interested in the Z06, even though a lot of people haven't even gotten their Stingrays yet, including myself. With that said, we get another leak today, showing the 2022 Corvette C8 Z06. Now, Corvette Blogger actually starts out this article with an interesting little tidbit, and that is two Z06s actually leaving a park. So I'm going to put in that video clip right here so you guys can hear a little bit of the exhaust and the engine sound. It's kind of toned down because the people driving the car specifically didn't get on it. I'm assuming because they didn't want bystanders to know that that's not a normal Stingray. But anyway, check out this clip. Overall, these two C8 Z06s were photographed and videoed with two additional C8 Corvette Stingrays, as well as the GT2 RS and the Ferrari 488. Those are definitely some high-end cars for GM to benchmark against, and that makes a lot of sense because this car is apparently going to be an absolute monster. Corvette Blogger actually goes on to say exactly what I just said a second ago, and that was that the drivers of the C8 Z06 were positioned perfectly between the C8 Stingray and purposely didn't give it a whole lot of gas so that the engine tone and the exhaust note would all stay relatively hidden from any bystanders. But you can still tell there is a difference between the way these cars accelerate and the sound that they make. All right, guys, so we're going to take a break from the action real quick to mention today's sponsor, and it is going to be Ridge Wallet. I've talked about them a couple times before, guys, but it's a real nice carbon fiber updated wallet. Allows you to carry your cash on the back with a money clip or a money band that will hold it, as well as hold up to 12 of your cards. As guys, we typically carry a bunch of crap in our wallet that we don't really need, and this really helps eliminate the mess. Now, this will hold your debit cards, credit cards, and even your identification, your driver's licenses, things like that. If you're interested in something like this, guys, definitely check out the description down below. I will put the 10% off coupon down there. You can save some money on these just for being a Horsepower Obsessed fan. Now, the next bit about the C8 Z06 comes from gmauthority.com, and they actually get some photos of the Z06 prototype showing off an exotic rear wing and huge tires. Now, if you guys remember the previous video we talked about the Z06, there was a lot of rumors circulating that the car was going to get Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2R style tires, at least in the Z07 packaged car. Interestingly enough, this car was photographed today with the Sport Cup 2R tires. So these pictures are legitimately the Z07 packaged Z06 we're going to see hopefully within the next year or so, or at least get an official word on within the next year. But this is the car. So right off the bat, everybody notices that oddly shaped wing. Now, we've talked about this 100 times on the channel. There's been rumors left and right suggesting that the C8 Z06 was going to have a larger rear wing, possibly something more modeled after the C8R. But instead we get this. And to me, it kind of looks like a hawk coming in for a landing. I'm not sure how I feel about it, honestly. And the one thing I learned with these spy shots is when they're camo wrapped like this, that's very, very, very likely exactly what it's going to look like. When the C8 Stingray was first photographed wearing camo, I thought a lot of the rear spoiler design and everything was going to actually be purposely misshapen to make people think that the car was a little bit different than it actually was. But at the end of the day, it was exactly what we got. So I'm not really feeling this wing, but I'm hoping that once I see it on the car and in action, it might be better. GM Authority actually hints at the fact that that particular wing likely has a lot of an aerodynamic advantage because they're sure that GM has put the time in to figure out a way to keep that rear end even more planted with even more power. With that said, I'm still not 100% sure I like it, but I'll reserve final judgment for when the car actually comes out and I can see it in the flesh. Now, moving past the kind of strange wing, we go on to a little bit more information on the Z07 packaged car, and that is the size of the tires. Now, we did talk about this in the previous video, but it was more of a rumor style thing. Now it has been confirmed. This car is definitely going to wear the Type R tires, as well as have front tires sized at 275/30/20s and rear tires sized at 345/25/21s. So again, this was a rumor not that long ago that has been basically confirmed here through some spy shots. So unless GM changes something at the very last second, the C8 Z06 is going to have massive wheels and the grippiest freaking tires I've ever seen in my life on a Corvette. So what we're seeing here is definitely the Z07 package being tested, and we're definitely looking at a car that's going to be an absolute beast. One other additional note about the tire wheel setup on this particular car is that Chevy decided to actually zip tie a plate over top of the wheels, so we're not able to see the caliper, rotor, or wheel setup. The only real reason to do this would be because it's going to give away the fact that it's not your base Stingray. Now, one of the pictures GM Authority actually took and zoomed in on, you can clearly see behind this disc cover thing on the face of the wheel that is a carbon fiber wheel hiding under there. You can't see the rotors or the calipers, but if that's the Z07 package, odds are good we're also gonna see some carbon ceramics under there as well. Definitely interesting stuff here, guys. I love whenever I see pieces of information that were leaked months ago or rumored months ago end up coming true. Now, no, it's not the greatest if you're running around smashing potholes, but I think it's one of the coolest features to really cut down on the weight for the C8 Z06. It makes it very obvious that GM is taking this car very seriously, and they want to make sure it is going to be a performer. Now, from the side profile, the wing actually looks a lot like the wing does on the C7 ZR1, which I am obviously a fan of, but it's odd how much different it looks from the back. I'm not really sure what GM is looking to do with this. I can only kind of hope that maybe this isn't a finalized design, because I'd rather see a wing a lot like it is on the ZR1 make its way to the C8 Z06, or even the wing from the C8R, something along that style. But the way that thing looks from the side with a wing, it looks like it sits a little bit lower. It's definitely a more aggressive version of the C8 Stingray, and that's exactly what we all want. Now, moving on to the next little bit, we actually get some spy shots of the front bumper as well, and this is where things really get interesting. Since the day that the C8R was officially announced and officially shown, I had a really good feeling that the C8 Z06 was going to borrow a lot of the design elements from that car, and that is not a bad thing. I think the C8R is one of the nicest looking race cars out there, and if the C8 Z06 looks anything like that, it's going to be an absolute home run. And with the front bumper being photographed in these spy shots, it absolutely looks like we're going to get a lot of the design elements from the C8R, one of which being the multi-LED setup or fog lights that the C8R has. While you can't see it on the C8 Z06, there's definitely something there. So even if it's not the multi-LED setup, which would be kind of interesting to see in a street legal car, I'm leaning more towards it probably being a wide open grille the way it is on the C7 ZR1 for additional cooling. Either way, these two pictures clearly show a car that looks very similar to each other, and that's awesome. Like I said, the C8 Z06 copying the C8R is not going to upset anybody. The car is awesome looking, and the more Chevy borrows design elements for the C8 Z06 from the C8R, the better the car's going to be. Now, where things get kind of interesting is GMAuthority.com actually says that this is expected for the 2022 model year, and that it will have a naturally aspirated 5.5 liter V8 LT6 engine with a flat plane crank, dual overhead cam, but they expect it to only have 600 horsepower and between 480 and 550 pound-feet of torque. Now, the 600 number has been floating around out there for a long time, and every time I make a video talking about how it's gonna have 600 horsepower, I get a lot of people upset saying that there's no way GM would release this C8 Z06 with less horsepower than the C7 Z06 had. And every time I hear that, I rebuttal with, it isn't all about horsepower. There's a lot more to this car than just horsepower. The C8 Z06 with only 600 horsepower would still very likely outrun the C7 with 650 horsepower. But they still don't like to see the number that low. Here's GM Authority still saying it's going to be 600 horsepower, even though leaked documents have suggested it's going to be at least 650. I think GM is playing around with these numbers and they're watching how people are reacting online to this kind of information, because if they can squeeze another 50 horsepower out of it with a different tune or a different exhaust or something, I think GM's going to do it if the overall consensus online is that people are not happy with 600 versus at least 650. Now, of course, GM Authority also goes on to say that the Z06 was originally supposed to arrive in the second half of 2021, but because of the whole world pandemic thing, it all got pushed back. Now it's going to be a 2022 C8 Corvette Z06. That has been reported on a couple different times, so nothing fantastically new there. But they finish out the article by saying that later on in the C8 Corvette life cycle, the vehicle is also going to see an E-Ray, a Grand Sport, a ZR1, and a Zora. And they've been right about a lot of stuff in the past, so I tend to agree. But one thing is for certain, this is very exciting. The C8 Z06 looks absolutely insane. The massive, meaty rear tires on the car definitely indicate a hugely staggered setup, outside of the fact that the wheels are an inch bigger in the rear and in the front to really give that car the supercar look. The only thing I'm not 100% thrilled about is that rear spoiler, but like I said, I will reserve final judgment for whenever I see it in the flesh, because I didn't really care for it on the base model C8 either, but after seeing it in person, I think the Z51 style spoiler on the C8 looks pretty good. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. So if you have any questions about the C8 Corvette Z06 or any model C8, leave them in the comment section down below or shoot me an email, horse.power.obsessed@gmail.com, and I'll make sure anything you have gets answered. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do. I have a C8 Corvette of my own on the way that you're definitely not going to want to miss, and a bunch of C7 content that you're also not going to want to miss. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next upload.